Welcome to episode 181 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, joining you from Barcelona, Spain, and my fellow analyst Anshul Sag is joining me as well. Unfortunately, buddy, you didn't get to make it this year, right?
It's all good. I had other important things to tend to.
You do. You're a new dad, and I think our viewers and listeners know that very, very well. So I will try to, do double duty while I'm here, and make up for that. But let's get started. We're going to kick off the podcast and talk about AT&T. I'm going to first talk about a launch around their dynamic defense. And so this news broke. I was actually pre-briefed by executives on this, and what dynamic defense is basically AT&T embedding cybersecurity capabilities on the wire. So, over fiber and within the mobile network as well to deliver some core cybersecurity functionality. Now, the company is initially targeting this towards small to medium-sized businesses, and I think that's pretty smart because that size organization tends to be underprotected. Those organizations don't have typically the security operations resources that larger enterprises have. But I also do believe that dynamic defense could be advantageous for larger enterprise customers in that it could potentially filter a lot of the inbound, potential hazardous payloads and go pretty far in reducing alert fatigue and improve fidelity. Now, I don't see dynamic defense necessarily, replacing, the various point solutions that very large enterprises deploy, but it could be another layer. And this is the first iteration, the first launch of it. I mean, certainly AT&T has been injecting security into its connectivity services, but they're just sort of, from my perspective, taking this to the next level. And I think if they engage in future partnerships, like for example with the cloud solution providers, because a lot of security is being delivered via the cloud, I think it could really augment and enhance what they're doing. So there's no news around that yet, but I would expect that in the future because so much of cybersecurity is a partnership. One size does not fit all, and one solution does not fit all. So I don't know if you caught the news here. I like it. One of 5G superpowers is improved encryption over LTE. So this sort of takes it another level. But this is available via wireline as well as mobility. But did you catch the news?
I did not. So this
Okay.
was me finding out as you tell our audience.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it's pretty interesting. It does definitely sound like more of um, a way to ensure that endpoints are secure, and
Mhm.
that the secure network doesn't just end uh, at the transport level, and that there's a lot more um, security implemented at the endpoint.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good thing. I mean, having additional layers of protection is always very, very good. But hey, let's keep with the AT&T theme, and I want to go to your first topic. And this was pretty big news, and we're going to talk about the nationwide outage that AT&T experienced. By the way, T-Mobile and Verizon were also affected, but not to the extent that AT&T customers were. But I'm gonna let you take it from here. I've got some thoughts, but this is your topic, so I'll let you start with it.
Yeah, so this was an outage that occurred, I want to say 2 days ago now, so like on
Mhm.
Thursday.
Yeah.
I think from what I recall, it was late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning was when the outage occurred. Um, and basically, at first, everybody thought it was a nationwide outage, because people were trusting Down Detector to tell them when their cellular network is out.
Mhm.
Um, but for the most part, it seemed like it was AT&T that was affected. And if some people are roaming, they could be roaming on AT&T's network, which would explain why some people were experiencing outages.
Yeah.
Um, But for the most part, Verizon and T-Mobile both said that they never experienced a nationwide outage, or even really acknowledged any customers lost service, and said that their networks are fully operational. And then by the time I got a response from AT&T, they told me they had already recovered three-quarters of their network.
Yeah.
And they said that an application the application execution of an incorrect process was used as they were expanding their network. So this sounds like a software configuration issue.
Right.
When I first heard that it wasn't nationwide and that it was mostly isolated to AT&T, um, I felt like it was going to be a network configuration issue, rather than a cyber attack, just
Yeah.
because, um, you know, the way people were experiencing the outage felt very much on like the RAN level, or at least
Mhm.
maybe a layer below that at um, the network level. But I didn't really feel like it was a complete attack. Um,
Yeah.
so once they said it was a software update, it made more sense. Um, and yeah, it was, I would say, not the best experience for AT&T customers. Um, I didn't really use my AT&T phone that day, so I didn't really experience anything.
Mhm.
But I was on T-Mobile and Verizon, and both of them were working when I checked. Um, and yeah, I think this is one of those things where nationwide outages really suck, because they become national news, and also first responders are dependent on AT&T's network for FirstNet. So that's something to consider as well. That there's some first responders who didn't have connectivity. Um, and yeah,
But do we
it's
but do we know that, Anshul? Because um, there wasn't any sort of delineation between kind of the broader public mobile network and FirstNet Authority. So
yeah.
um,
All I'm saying is that I saw reports of it, but there wasn't. I haven't seen any statements from FirstNet.
yeah.
Um, and I didn't have time to reach out to them because this happened on Thursday, and
Hmm.
I just sent out a bunch of emails to all the three carriers. But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, and these things do happen.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see how the FCC and other agencies kind of got involved with reporting on what the situation is and whether it's a real concern. But yeah, it's definitely a challenging situation, and oddly enough, FirstNet didn't put anything out on Twitter, or I don't think they released any statements. So
No.
we don't actually know what the condition was of their network.
Yeah, I think this was really sort of the broader, public mobile network, not necessarily FirstNet Authority. And your first thought is, could this be a cyber attack? It appears that it was not. And certainly there are rules and regulations that if telecom infrastructure is compromised, that they have to fess up. We saw that with T-Mobile when they experienced their cyber attack. And then I was digging into this. I contacted AT&T. They really couldn't provide a lot of details like you. They told me that they were able to get three-quarters of the service, restored in pretty short order. There were some that were speculating around, could this have been a peering issue with handoffs between certain cell towers? But um, hey, it just proves that networks are vulnerable, and that was my thought. That there must have been some sort of software update or something that happened. I mean, bear in mind, AT&T is being very aggressive about leveraging open telecom infrastructure, and a lot of that is software defined. And there are huge advantages to having programmability in the network from an agility perspective, and sort of the ability to roll out services more quickly and that sort of thing. So you know um, shit happens, right? So but
Yeah,
it really demonstrates just how important cellular connectivity is in our daily lives. I'll just share just a very brief little anecdote. I finally was able to get the painter back over to the house to do some final things, and he kept asking me about this SOS. And that's when all the news broke. about the outage. So, we do depend on cellular connectivity. It is critical infrastructure. It does support first responders now, to your point, and I'm sure AT&T will be doing a lot of examination into this and determining root cause. I am an AT&T customer. I did get a text yesterday when I was flying from the States over here to Spain, just apologizing for the outage and valuing me as a customer, committed to doing better. Not a lot of specifics there, but we
By
wish
the way,
AT&T.
FirstNet
Yeah,
did confirm that they had outages in multiple
they did.
cities.
Oh,
I
wow. Okay.
got that off light reading. But yeah, it was definitely a shocker for a lot of people, and um, yeah, it was definitely a major event.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's go to my second topic. I want to talk about Mobile World Congress. I am here for the week. Boy, it's going to be, hectic. I've got meetings almost back to back. It even starts on Sunday for me. It started on Sunday for me last year as well, but I'll be spending time with Samsung and then, got a couple of dinners and, be a lot of receptions here. But so I get started Sunday.
Don't get
But,
food poisoning.
what's that?
Don't get food poisoning.
Yeah, I'm not going to get food poisoning. So I have a new rule of thumb. I do not eat buffet sushi. I learned my lesson last year. But hey, I'm super excited about this year. I mean, a lot of people are equally excited. From my perspective, generative AI, I believe, is going to be front and center. And, how that gets applied to telco workloads will be really interesting. Certainly, there are, customer support aspects to that, field service aspects to that. But I do expect to learn a lot about generative AI and how that's going to be applied within the mobility space. I also believe satellite communication, something that you and I have been talking about on this podcast many times. I believe that's going to be front and center this year, and how satellite is going to come together with terrestrial cellular networks to bridge the digital divide. So I have meetings set up with a number of different solution providers there, and I'm hoping to be able to provide some additional perspective this week, as well as in a Forbes wrap up of the event. And I think finally, I'm expecting to hear more about where we're at with Open RAN. I mean, this is something that got started quite a while ago, very focused in the US on domesticating the 5G supply chain and weaning certain parts of the United States off of Chinese infrastructure and rip and replace. And we've seen rip and replace, occurring all around the world. We're seeing Open RAN being embraced outside of the United States as well. Vodafone has been a very big proponent. They, from my perspective, have been leading the charge as a European operator, Deutsche Telekom to a lesser extent as well. So it'll be interesting to see sort of the evolution of where we're at. I think we're finally, and you and I have talked about Open RAN. I feel like we're finally at critical mass. We're moving from point of or proof of concept into deployment, both in brownfield and greenfield. So, hey, those are the three things that I'm going to be focused on. I was on like 20 or 30 pre-briefs the last, week and a half, 2 weeks. I know you were as well. I know you're not on the ground this year, but do you have a couple of additional expectations that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I could launch into my topic, which I think kind of falls into that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think when you look at like what's already been announced, which is kind of what I want to talk about.
Hmm.
I'm already talked about their R&D demos, and then they
Yeah.
also talk about all their pre-MWC announcements. There will be another announcement coming literally tomorrow after we publish this. So I've been on the fence about whether or not to include those, but then half this podcast would just be Qualcomm announcements. So I'm gonna split them out. I think it's better that
Okay.
way.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll talk about Qualcomm again after the fact, as opposed to ahead of time. Um, I do have a chip here in Lucite. You can imagine what it might be, considering we're talking about Qualcomm, but I'm not going to flip it and show
Mhm.
you. Um, And
Don't
then
break that embargo. Yeah,
nope,
don't
not
break
gonna
that
do it.
embargo.
Not gonna do it. I'm
I
great
mean,
at
the reason why I had to stay really high level on kind of my three, kind of expectations is that 90% of the stuff that I was pre-briefed on doesn't start breaking until
it.
Monday. So
Monday. Yeah, some of it's
yeah,
Sunday, some of it's Monday, but I'm
yeah.
gonna rapid fire these so we can get through them fast. So
Okay,
first,
go for it.
Qualcomm came out with announcements on infrastructure. They talked about their infrastructure processors. Those are for vRAN applications and for small cells. And then they kind of talked about using their infrastructure processors with other chips, including their AI accelerators, to run 5G networks. Then they did a whole thing about 5G advanced demos and 6G. They actually invited us over to their headquarters in their demo warehouse in San Diego, and because I'm local, I was able to do that. Ironically enough, most people are going to hear about these demos but never experience them in person because they're not really transportable.
Hmm.
Demos that we saw were GigaMIMO. So we actually saw them testing GigaMIMO in their warehouse where they're turning in, watching the reflections and stuff. And GigaMIMO is going to be basically what we have with massive MIMO, but higher antenna counts, higher bands, and essentially their claim is it's going to operate the same in terms of footprint as midband does today with you know uh, massive MIMO. So um, we'll see what happens, but there's definitely already some hope there that these higher frequency bands will be what we use for 6G, except for China, who will be using 6 GHz, which is what everybody else is using for Wi-Fi 7. So that's a different
Yeah,
discussion to have.
yeah.
In addition to that, there was a satellite demo, which was pretty cool, where they had a full anechoic chamber and they were using a robotic arm to simulate a satellite passing over at the exact speed that a satellite would, and then using that to show how their 5G NTN solution works. And they are now using in the standard within release 17, as opposed to a proprietary one that they had previously, which was called Snapdragon Space, I think. Snapdragon Satellite.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, On top of that, they also showed us a demo of their um, basically a digital twin and how they're using that to simulate coverage indoors and how to improve that simulation so that they can fully simulate these kinds of things without having to have somebody regularly run tests and just kind of honing in that data so they can help industrial companies and application teams to figure out how to quickly change their configuration or optimize their configuration for the best coverage for private
Hmm.
networking. And then there was also a demo that I got that was a 5G AR demo, which basically allowed me to see Barcelona in AR, but both using local and cloud compute and seamlessly transitioning between the two, based on the conditions of the network and the congestion in it. So there was
So
even 5G red cap stuff. It was a very busy
it's a
event.
smorgasbord of demos, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, tons of stuff. On top of all that, they announced their Wi-Fi 7 automotive grade access point solution.
I saw
Um,
that. Yeah.
then they also announced their third generation of their 5G fixed wireless access ultra platform, which
Hmm.
is based on the modem that's not announced yet. I'm pretty sure. It's
Hmm.
funny that they talk about this platform, but they don't say what's in it. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
I'm wrong. It's an X75. So last
Okay.
generation modem is
Yeah.
in there, and that's just going to be faster, more power efficient. It's going to be great. And what was interesting was they were showing how this solution has a new motorized reflector with 360-degree field of view. So it's like basically going to find the millimeter wave signal where it's best and stick to
Hmm.
it, which I thought was kind of cool. That definitely sounds like something that would be really useful for somebody who wants to have millimeter wave, or that's like their solution.
Yeah.
And other than that, I think uh, that was the barrage. I'll add that there was also approval of the FCC when it comes to AFC and allowing Qualcomm to manage the access on the 6 GHz spectrum. So that's maybe not as relevant because it's a little bit Wi-Fi-ish, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, they just had a barrage of announcements. That was about 2 or 3 days ago, and I went visit them last week. So I haven't written any of that up yet, but there's so much to talk about. It's exhausting, and that's why I'm not even talking about all the other stuff that's getting announced in a couple
Yeah,
days.
I know. It's call it a smorgasbord, a charcuterie board, a lot of tapas, a lot of stuff from Qualcomm. I mean, they're always, they're always. It just seems like the payload on their launches is just super intense, and there'll be more breaking this week, and you and I might want to collaborate on a show wrap up here, but. Hey, let me go hit my third and final topic. And I found this on RCR Wireless, and it's pretty cool. I think you'll agree with me. But Singtel, they're a Singaporean mobile network operator. They tend, we've talked about them on prior podcasts. They tend to be pretty cutting edge, but they're claiming the first app-based network slicing demo or technology proof of concept. And they're stating that this was implemented in partnership with Ericsson and Samsung. And what they're claiming is the ability um, to enable app owners to activate a custom slice of Singtel's 5G network to boost the performance of that particular app and enhance the user experience. Now, this is different because traditionally network slicing technologies provide a differentiated, experience, whether it's, tailored to latency or throughput or whatever, to a subscriber line more broadly and not tailored to an application. So, this is pretty cool. I'd never heard of it, and it's using an advanced slicing technology known as user equipment route selection policy, or URSA, with application detection control (ADC). Um, and this particular demonstration was tested using Singtel's Cast application during a live stream of the recent Australian Open. So this is pretty cool, man. If you think about it, like being able to like direct it down to the application level. I mean, this could be really cool. I mean, there could be some really, significant, applications that are realized from this. So, I mean, were you even aware of this technology? Because you and I talk about network slicing quite a bit on this podcast.
Yes, I have been available. I've known about URSP, but I didn't
Yeah,
know about ADC. Um,
yeah,
but the good thing is, I what this sounds like is it seems like it's just an extension of network slicing to the application layer. Um,
yeah.
some kind of SDK. Um, I'm thinking that this will probably be something that they offer as a service to application developers to get a
Hmm.
little bit more granular control of
Yeah,
the network and how the devices operate. But I do wonder, like, since this is a network slice, like, is this like a generic network slice that they would already have set up and then let the developer shape it a little bit on the application side? I think that's probably the more reasonable application than, having a application, configure the network itself,
right.
or at least, do its own version of that. I'm sure that was easier because they're the operator and it was their app. Once you start getting third-party apps, I think it gets a little more challenging, and I think that's probably where it gets a little more complicated and where we'll probably see a little bit more general configurations of network slicing.
Yeah, just a little further detail on Samsung's involvement. So Samsung, like this is an article on RCR Wireless that Samsung has stated that they've already configured URSP for its Galaxy S24 Ultra and plans to extend the rollout to other devices. So yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you. I think the kind of the DevOps or the developer angle of it would be pretty cool. Sort of like this whole notion around APIs and, using APIs to make mobile networks more programmable. It's one of the reasons why Ericsson spent so much money on Vonage, right? But yeah, no, it's super cool. I wasn't aware of, this application kind of layer, slice capability. Pretty cool. I'll have to, kind of keep my eyes and ears tuned into that. But hey, let's wrap things up. I'm getting through this with minimal jet lag. But you want to talk about Sony's new portable 5G transmitter, and what is that all about, man?
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Basically, it's actually it's two things in one. It's actually really a smartphone, um, but it's not a smartphone. And the way I
Hmm.
say that is it has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, it has cellular connectivity, it has a screen, it has a camera, but it is not really a smartphone at all. Um,
Hmm.
its purpose is actually to connect 4K, broadcast cameras or smart or just a regular photo camera to
Hmm.
the cellular network so that they can upload their files
Yeah.
to whoever's FTP they're working for. So this is definitely more of like a work application. This is not really for consumers.
Yeah.
Um, and they're showing millimeter wave support. So this does do millimeter wave, which I think is necessary for this kind of application. But it
Hmm.
depends on the, where you're actually located. Because it seems like some places don't support millimeter wave, so they won't actually even offer it.
Yeah.
It's actively cooled with a heatsink. It has an HDMI port, two USB ports, and an Ethernet port. So you can connect it to your camera directly over HDMI, or you can connect it to something else using Ethernet, or you can use USB-C. So you have options for connectivity. It also has expandable storage, which most phones don't have today, which is 256 gigs of internal and then an additional 1 TB with an SD card. So it can also store footage as well.
Uh-huh.
It also has a 1/4 inch tripod screw hole, so you can mount it if you need to. So it doesn't have to be attached to your camera. And then on top of that, it says that they already have it, um, you know, pre-qualified with some of their devices and services, um, and that they have um, a network visualizer so you can see how the data is being transferred. Um, and it looks like, a lot of this is like having it attached to different parts of the camera that you have for your rig. But you could also have this attached to a tripod. Interestingly enough, um, it does have an OLED screen. It does have dual SIM connectivity. It has nano SIM and eSIM support. Um, and it has all the bands you would expect. It says maximum uplink is 1.1 gigabits per second, and a maximum downlink is 8.1 gigabits per second, which I would assume is a millimeter wave configuration. And
Hmm.
then on top of that, it's basically just uh, a modem that's really a phone that's really also not a phone. And in the photos, they kind of have it shown with both video and photo cameras. And in a lot of the video
Yeah.
camera configurations, it's kind of like just mounted to the top of the camera instead of like a
Yeah.
viewfinder.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool because it's actively cooled. It has a heat sink. It has a camera on the back. I don't really know what it's for yet, but um, it definitely, having two networks sounds like you would want to have that, as a
Yeah.
fallback in case there's an outage or the speeds aren't good. But
Hmm.
with a lot of these new capabilities of the networks and added frequency to their spectrum holdings, we're hearing about networks like T-Mobile offering 300 megabits per second upload.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're doing 4K footage, you're going to take every single megabit you can get, especially when there's any
Hmm.
congestion. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just think it's a really interesting configuration. And, they didn't really talk that much about the antennas, but they
Yeah.
kind of have an illustration of what it looks like. Um, but yeah, I would consider this if I were in the field wanting to upload my footage, whether it's video or photos, in real time. Because if you watch a lot of these, professional photographers on sporting events, they usually have a laptop sitting right next to them for uploading it in real time. And this would be
Exactly.
an alternative to using a laptop where you could just, set up the FTP, and just have those files rip. And then you don't, and they still use, SD card runners, but maybe they aren't necessary, if this is able to upload fast enough.
Yeah, no, it's a super cool demonstration of the power of 5G from a speed and kind of latency perspective. It reminds me of these Wi-Fi enabled SD cards that would allow you to, on your home network, do something sort of similar over Wi-Fi, right? But this is like leveraging 5G and with 4K video, I mean, these files are massive, right? And the
Yeah,
ability to be to not have that redundant step of a laptop and be able to upload it, wherever, and then there's also 5G broadcast as well, right? I mean, could
they
that
did
that
say
could be a part of it? Yeah.
It did say it supports up to 4K 60 video, so that could actually
Yeah.
be a good opportunity for us as consumers to get higher quality video, because most platforms today only really support 1080p, and very
Yeah.
few broadcasts are actually done in 4K. So we
Mhm.
could actually see more 4K broadcasts as a result of this.
Yeah, I agree, my friend. Well, hey, what a great demonstration of 5G's power, but another great podcast. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide insights on a future 5G topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Willtown Tech and I'm at Anshel Sog. We hope you have a great week, and please tune again next week. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll have tons of content for you guys, and we'll hopefully, maybe even make it shorter.